What is going on, my beautiful people? Welcome to yet again another episode of the Pivot Mindset Podcast. My name is Justin. I am your host. And we made it. We made it to another episode. Man, I'm excited to talk about this topic today. I say that every episode. I'm excited to talk about every topic. Every time we get on here, I'm super excited, man. I really enjoy this podcasting thing. I'm not sure that I really knew how much I would enjoy creating a podcast. Podcasting is such a wonderful thing. I want to first, before we get into the episode, I want to dive into, I think if you've questioned the podcast or a podcast, I think you should do it. I think that everyone should have a podcast. I think that podcasting is the future. There's tons of stats out there now that are, showing the longevity and the growth of podcasting. A lot of big companies are buying podcasts. A lot of big companies are sponsoring and funding podcasts. And a lot of this is simply because you can create an audience around your thing, right? And one of the best things and easiest things for marketers and for advertisers to do is to go directly to an audience. And so, with podcasting, you create that platform, you create that audience and those people that are loyal listeners. And so I want to thank you for being a loyal listener. I want to thank you for continuing to click on this podcast, man. It's, for me, this is a great outlet. It's an opportunity for me to really every single week gather my thoughts, talk about what's on my heart, talk about what's important to me, maybe even reflect on things that I've learned to be able to share with you, talk about things that, my clients have gone through around mindset coaching or business coaching. And so, this podcast is still very early, y'all. Like I still feel very new in the podcasting game. I think this is probably episode, 30 or 31, somewhere around there. And so I think it's time. It's time to talk about a topic that I think is very important. And I talked a little bit about my story in episode 27. And I want to talk a little bit more about it. But before I dive into my story a little bit more, I want to first talk about something that I've recently, I think, realized is how important your story is. So I recently hired on an advisor in my business, and this person is going to help me with doing a lot of marketing things and rolling out a lot of new stuff that I want to roll out in the future. And he asked me, really had to do like this full deep dive on a lot of different questions he had me answer. And one of the questions that he asked me was, what's your story? What is your story, Justin? Like, who are you? Who are you? And how did you get to where you are? What are the things that you've gone through, good and bad? How would you depict those things? And the ultimate goal for that was to be able to bottle up your story and to be able to use it to encourage other people. And so I'm not sure, honestly, just hang on for the ride. I'm not sure how long this podcast is going to go. I'm not sure how deep I'm going to be able to go on some of this stuff. But I wanted to tell you guys a little bit about my story, a little bit more about my story, because I think stories are transformative. And when I think of the people that I really received the most from, it was people that had amazing stories. And not amazing in that they won or that they had the silver spoon in their mouth, but it was stories where, I heard people's pain, and, it was things that they may have been very challenging to go through, very traumatic events. And what you realize is that it's not just the ups that really help people, but it's your downs. It's the things that you've gone through. It's the things that you've made it through. It's how you've processed through life. And it's the fact that you are still moving forward despite the failures, despite the upbringing, despite the cards that you were dealt. And some of the stuff that I'm gonna talk about today is based on cards that I was dealt, but some of it is decisions that I've made in my life that may have had successes or failures. So let's dive in, man. So one of the things that I'm like literally looking at kind of my story, like this is almost chapter 1 in a book when I finally write one, but like kind of this who is Justin thing. And I'm gonna just highlight and pick on some of the aspects of it that I think could be important to share with you. And so, for any of you that don't know, I was born and raised in Akron, Ohio. And not so great neighborhoods. My family struggled while I was growing up. I grew up primarily my early years, with a single mom. While I was at elementary school, and I grew up with two older sisters, Shauna and Shawanda. Shout out to you guys if you're listening to this. But we went to 4 different elementary schools, or I did. I went to 4 different elementary schools in 5 years. And so we bounced around a lot. We had to move a lot. And some of that was, I believe, because, we just didn't like the neighborhoods. Some of that was we were getting kicked out of houses. So it wasn't all roses, right? Like, it wasn't like, oh, we were moving on up. It was, no, like, these weren't great neighborhoods. And so it was quite the challenge, because I know as a child, there was challenge with me, like, I think finding my identity early, which I believe also to help to substantiate my abilities now to fit in crowds and to walk in rooms that I may not know people, and to have like a pretty wide network group. But back then it was because I didn't have a choice. And it was every year you were going to a different school and you were making a new, you were having a new set of friends. If I add them all up from first grade till graduating high school, I went to 7 different schools. So, in 12 years, I went to 7 different schools, which is pretty crazy. And I was raised in a struggling home, like many African Americans. Like, I wasn't raised in a neighborhood that, I seen success. I didn't see a lot of success where I came up from. I didn't see people really like winning on a really like good level. I seen a lot of people struggling. I seen alcohol addiction early. I seen drug addiction. I seen violence. I seen poverty. All of these things begin to shape your world. They begin to frame up who you are. And I seen a lot of that stuff early. And so, I know what it is to like have lights cut off. I know what it is growing up to have water and cut off, or heat cut off. I know what it is to like heat up water on the stove and put it in the tub and have to add cold water to have a nice warm bath. Like, I know what it is to like heat up a house with an oven and not a furnace. You know what I'm saying? Like, because there in that lifestyle, right? There's you got 1 or 2 options. You could pay their heat, or you could pay the electric. Depending on the season, depending on the year, you might pick one or the other, depending on if you needed heat, if you needed water, etc. Right? And so I was a latchkey kid too. I was a kid. I walked every school that I went to. I walked home. I wasn't like dropped off and picked up, from my family or anything like that. Like, I had moments or times where, people did pick me up and stuff like that. But predominantly, I was like a latchkey kid. I remember I would always walk home and have to call my mom and all that kind of stuff when I got home, let her know that, your son made it home, and, I would have to, hey, mom, I'm home. And I remember doing that like every day, every day I would call. And so life was tough, man. Like, I was brought up in an environment that literally could have broke me. Like, when I really look back over the circumstances, and truly, I know my family, I know my mom, and I know like everyone around me, I believe was doing the best they could with what they had. I believe I felt failed as a child because they were failed, right? And they didn't see life. They didn't see much more than what they were doing, right? And that's, for me, I think that's why it's so important for the Pivot Mindset podcast, is that like, I want to make sure that, and this is the great part about social media and us living such a wide open world now, is that you can see someone else's life and someone else's reality that's not yours and that's not in your neighborhood. Back then, there was no like social media. There was no escape outside of a music video or outside of a celebrity or outside of something that you've seen on TV. And so for me, it's really going through that and always being different. I think I was always different as a kid, though. There was many times where, I wanted to fit in, but I never did, man. Like, I never really fit in. I had always been very smart, I believe. I was always a student that never really had like straight A's. I was like a C average, 2.0 to 2.5 was my sweet spot. That was the lane that I stayed in. You know, like I wasn't gonna be a straight A guy. But the crazy part about it is, I was smart. It wasn't that I was proficient in school, but I was smart. Like I was taking honor classes by my senior year. I was taking like AP calculus, and I think there's another AP class that I took. So I was smart, but I was intelligent. Let me put it like that. I was, always been intelligent, but school and book smarts just necessarily wasn't my thing. And so for me, man, like to kind of speed up a bit, once I got to college, and hold on, let me back up a little bit. Football was like my escape. Football was something that I could commit my life to and commit myself to for it kept me, sports, man, being able to be dedicated to a team and being able to see other men and other young men and have coaches and all that kind of stuff like that saved my life. There's no doubt that being able to commit myself to a sport and getting better at that sport and being in a family like that and being around men was significant for me. So I first started playing football at the age of 7, and ever since 7 all the way up until my junior year in college at Kent State was the last time I, laced up the cleats and played on a football field. And so I had an outlet. And I think that's something that a lot of people that grew up like I grew up, I think our sports become our outlet. That becomes the thing that we give our lives to and commit ourselves to keep us out of trouble. And it definitely kept me out of a lot of trouble. My father, my biological father, died when I was 12 years old. And in a heights, here's the kicker to this, right? My father died in a high-speed chase running from the police. You know what I'm saying? Like I don't come from a great, like a great background and people that they're great people, but people that have flaws like we all do. And so losing a father at the age of 12, I didn't necessarily know. I'm learning more and more as I get older, the true impacts of that. What I am thankful for, though, is that, one, I'm thankful for the time that I did get to spend with him on earth, but I'm also thankful that through all of that God had continued to bring father figures into my life to be a blessing. God, no matter what, continued to bring men into my life that would be what he couldn't be, that would be present when he couldn't be present. When he passed away, that would step up and show me what it was to be a man and show me what it was to give me an example, And so that's something that I will say throughout all of my story. And if you're listening to this as well, is I've known God to be so faithful that he's given me anything and everything that I've ever needed. If I've never lacked, if I'm honest. There could have been things that I've wanted more of, but I've had some tough times. And through those tough times, God has still kept me. Like God has sustained me. God has made ways out of no ways. And so if you're listening to this and you may be in a point and you may be in a low place in life, or you may not know right from left, and you're just trying to make it one day, and you're trying to take one step and put one foot in front of the other. Life is like that sometimes. And I just want to encourage you that don't beat yourself up because of where you are. It's going to get better. Things always get better. Things are always going to improve. And so to pivot a little bit, right? Thankfully I had football, and I was good at football. For me, I think just where my mindset was, it built. I just always had that hustle mentality. I wasn't ever the most gifted person on the field, but I was very much so one of the hardest working. I was the first guy in, last guy out kind of mentality, put in the effort. I was always a leader, always someone who led my teams. I got leadership awards and, MVP awards and all that kind of stuff in high school. And man, when I got out of high school, I had a bunch of Division III and Division II offers. And at that moment, I had to make a decision. Was I gonna go down that path? And I was undersized, I'm 5'8", and, had average speed, had average strength, had average jumping ability. So I wasn't like some freakish athlete. I was 5'8". I wasn't running a 4.2, 4.3 or something like that. And so I was getting a bunch of D3 and D2 offers. And I didn't want to go to those schools, man. I thought I was better than that. And so instead of doing that and taking those those offers, I decided to go to my alma mater where I graduated from, Kent State University. And I went there with the intention to walk on. And I did just that. So I went to Kent State and I walked on to the football program. I walked on and made the team. And same, man, it was like a world of difference. Making it onto that team and being a part of that community was like the first time that I was so away from I was away from my family. I was away from everything that I knew. You were kind of like immersed into a whole different culture. Football did change for me, though. I believe in high school, football was very much family oriented. You knew the people that you were playing against. Y'all grew up together. Y'all would go hang out at each other's houses. You know, in the stands, you seen your family, you seen their family, you were playing against your friends. But when I got to high school, it was way different. You were an investment. You were definitely someone that they thought as an investment. And it was, you know, how you keep your body fat percentage down and how strong you were and recording all your stats. And, you know, you were competing against the next man, and every man was out there trying to make a living for themselves. Like they were out there. We were all out there with the intention that, like, man, this could be our way out. Like we were playing football because this was the way out. Like this was, man, this is powerful that I'm thinking about this, because there were people that showed up there and they knew that this was a way to get their life and their family out of poverty. And so every day they were under that pressure to perform as best they could. They weren't out. Most people that were there, they loved the game, but they also loved the potential that it could and how it could separate themselves, you know, and separate their family. And so, man, throughout all of this and just my upbringing, and I've skipped a lot of stuff for lack of time, because I don't want to necessarily, like, I'm not giving you guys a book. There will be a book coming out soon. But throughout this, I struggled also because I was I was a Christian, and I got saved at the age of 16, actually. My high school football coach invited me to this judgment house. And if any of you don't know, it's like every year around Halloween, a lot of churches do it around the country. A lot of churches do it around the country. They will create like it's like a play, and you'll go from room to room in the church, and they create a scenario. And at the end of the scenario, the guy that I thought would go to heaven didn't. And the guy that I was like, I knew he wasn't going to heaven, went to heaven. And it confused me because, you know, I thought if you were a good person, you were getting in. I thought that, you know, hey, as long as you lived a life and you were good to people, and, you know, you lived a morally strong life, and you didn't steal and kill and rob, and you were honest, you know, and if it was okay if you told white lies and all that kind of stuff, I thought that's what it took. And man, at that age, I realized, like, that's not the way. That's not how you get into heaven. And so I committed my life to the Lord. And so simultaneously, I'm walking in my gifting, being a young Christian, and walking in, you know, at that time, you know, I still, my call is there, my gift is there, but a gift to lead people and a gift to speak. And I began preaching and leading youth ministries and all that kind of stuff. And so, man, this whole college thing was struggling. I was struggling how to stay sound as a Christian, like how to not sin, how to stay committed to the Lord, but simultaneously want to enjoy fun and enjoy my college years and seeing all. So like in that age, man, that can be such a traumatic experience, you know, to have your own morals, to have your own values, to have your own guidelines, but to be immersed and kind of dropped into other people's. And so to speed up a little bit, I remember, man, I had played at Kent State for 2 years, and, you know, pretty much didn't play much, just kind of learned the ropes, you know, but I was getting in. I was like playing. I was a part of the team. And this was like my year, man. Like we're coming up onto that third year, my junior year. And this was time, you know, like I was in a rotation a lot. I think I was like rolling in and out of like second string, you know, like getting some reps sometimes with the ones, first string here and there. And man, we're preparing for our spring game. And at that point, you know, we were just doing walkthroughs, and we were just doing this walkthrough. You know, we were running plays, and we were all like literally walking. Nobody was playing seriously. And I got my feet tangled up on like a deep ball. Got my feet tangled up. Had a very, very like it was almost a break, but had a very bad like sprain to my ankle, and it was going to have me out for like a while. And I worked so hard to get to that point that, and like I knew, I was like, yo, I worked so hard to get here that like the minute that I'm out, I'm done. Like I just knew for sure, like the minute that I failed back down in the depth chart, it was going to be too much, and I didn't have it to try to climb the depth chart again. And so, man, at that time, I really felt God calling me to transition my life and to look at something else. And so to speed up, and I definitely don't want to talk about my entire story throughout this episode here, but to speed up, so I'm kind of breezing through some parts. I decided to change my major, and I focused on business and entrepreneurship and sales. So I was first a computer technology major. Once I stopped playing football, I changed my major in entrepreneurship, and I began to take a bunch of sales classes. And when I talk about the pivots, these are all pivots in my life that has substantiated a part of this podcast. This was a pivot that I made in my life. And when I took that pivot and I made that shift, everything seemed to open up. My whole world opened up, and I was working. I was making really good money. I mean, I was making like $40,000 a year in college. Like that, like that was more, I think, than a lot of people that I was growing up with was making. I think it was probably more than my mother was making at that time. Like I was really getting it, like working 2 jobs or so, like I was selling, doing stuff with commissions, all that kind of stuff. And so yeah, I did that, man, but got so focused on my major, and I loved entrepreneurship. And Kent State had this, they still have it, but they've got this program there where they allow you to create a business, and you can actually create a business with entrepreneurs in residence. And so I had other entrepreneurs that were successful that had already ran several businesses helping me along the way as I started my first company. And I started this company called Jet Crew Solutions. And the company, what we did was we did mobile technology consulting. It's crazy because I've been consulting all of my life. And what we would do, and this was like when iPads were first hot. So this was like 2012, 2013, something around there. And so what I would do is I would go business to business, and I would sell them on my ability to help them integrate their iPads and tablets into the functions and the operations of their stores. So it meant like I would help them set up their Square store. This was around like when you could first start swiping with a card on your phone or your tablet. That was new. So people were like crazy about that. So I was helping them with that. I was helping them with like time management and balancing their calendars and using their iPad to do it. I was helping them set up like their QuickBooks online using their tablets. Just crazy stuff, man. So that was like my first like jump into entrepreneurship, and I loved it. And throughout that, I also did a lot of stuff with sales at Kent State. I joined the sales team. I got to travel to compete with other schools, against other schools. So I was on Kent State sales team, and we competed against other schools. A moment that changed my life, man. I competed at what was called NCSC, National Collegiate Sales Competition, and they have it every single year in Kennesaw State down in Georgia. And I competed there, man, and that was one of the first. You had to go through like this entire role play, all this kind of stuff, but everybody there was trying to win the competition. I wasn't thinking about the competition. The competition was important to me, and I was preparing to win the competition, but I was seeing all the employers down there, and I was just trying to get a job, right? Like for me, I was there to go get a job. I graduated in May. This was February, and I ain't had no job yet. Like I didn't have a bunch of jobs yet. And so I went to that competition, and I did well in the first round, but they graded very strictly, and my buyer never actually gave me an objection, so I couldn't overcome it. And so I ended up getting dinged on points, so I didn't make it past the first round. But because I didn't make it past the first round, this is all God. I'm telling, like, this story is crazy. But because I didn't make it past the first round, I was able to like spend more time on the recruitment floor, talking to employers and having conversations. You know what I'm saying? And I had more clothes than a lot of the women that were there that came and competed as well. Cause I knew a part of it was looking the part, you know what I'm saying? So I brought my best suits. I had my best accessories. I had everything fit real well, and trying to look my best. And I ended up landing a bunch of opportunities out of that competition. So here it is. I didn't win the competition, but I felt like I really won because I was the one leaving by the end of it with tons of opportunities that came up. And so I was like looking through some of my notes not too long ago from years around that time. And I had graduated with like 9 different job offers. And a lot of them were substantiated because I took that opportunity at NCSC. And I end up from there, man. My wife and I got married a year before I graduated college. So we got married our senior year. We got married and bought a house our senior year in college. After we graduated, literally like a few months later, we were moving to California where I accepted a job offer at HP. And that was life-changing. That was a new environment. That was a new territory. And like as I'm looking at my story from starting at, early on where life started for me, it was all about exposure. I believe that I continued to level up. I wasn't never the hardest working, or I wasn't ever the most talented in the room. I was never the most successful person in the room. I was though, what I could control is my effort, and I could control my hard work, and I could control how I started that day and how I stepped up and what I did to overcome all of my challenges. And so for anybody who's listening to this story, man, like I want to encourage you in that, like, it doesn't matter where you start life. It doesn't matter what your start was or what cards you were dealt. It's funny. I've got a pack of cards right here. It doesn't matter, man. Like when you know life, you can't always like, here's a pack of cards, and I'm showing it to the YouTubers. Like it doesn't matter. Like these don't matter. What you were dealt does not matter. It doesn't matter. You can make the decision today to change your life. You can put the effort in today to change your scenario, to change your situation, to change your family tree. It's on you now. I could look at, and again, I'm sparing y'all a lot of the details, but I could look at a lot of the stuff that I was brought up in and use that as a reason not to succeed. But I've made the decision because I do want to sometimes go there. I do want to sometimes that's because of this person. There is no trust fund waiting for me. There was no one that paid for my college, paid for my tuition. You know what I'm saying? Like there is no huge life insurance policy that's waiting for me. You know what I'm saying? Like there is none of that. I'm starting from ground zero, right? And so you can too. Doesn't matter what you have. Actually, the fact that I didn't have any of that stuff helped me to not have to rely or look to other people. And it gave me an ability to look within myself to change my own situation. I don't need handouts. I don't need somebody to pull me up. I don't need somebody to put me on. I can put myself on. God's got me. God's got you. Like God is able and has been doing this my entire life, has been putting me in rooms and putting me in position. Not that he's made me do something. I had to then step up. I had to pray like all things depend on God, and had to work like everything depended on me. So it does take hard work, but God will put you in rooms that will allow your gifts to make room for you. And for me, man, like my gift has just continued to make room for me. My gift with people, my gift with communication, my gift with speaking, my gift of passion, all these things have just made room for me in my life. And so no matter where you are in life, like just know that it doesn't matter how you started. It doesn't matter what happened in your past. It doesn't matter where you came from. It doesn't matter the mistakes you or people around you made. You can make the decision today to change your life. You are not liable and held to the same person you were 5 minutes ago, 10 minutes ago, 10 days ago. You can be the best version of you right now. Right now. And so, man, to speed through the story, man, sorry for getting a little fired up, but like just to speed through the story, graduated college, man, took that job, moved out to California, and it was like life had changed. This is at a new level now. I'm starting to see life at a different pace. I'm starting to see it at a different level. I'm seeing it at a different income range. You know, I graduated college making $75,000 a year as a college graduate. Wasn't at the top of my class. This was to move out to California as well. You know what I'm saying? Like paying relocation packages. Like, yo, just a kid from Akron, just a kid from Akron, parents that didn't have a great start, that didn't give you a good start, that did the best they could, had their own struggles. Like, you could do anything with your life. And so I just continued to work hard, continued to climb the ladder there, took promotions there, made my first 6 figures, I believe at age 22, 23, moved out to Colorado, took a promotion at HP, continued to get the bag, continued to level up. And then I made a pivot. I transitioned into real estate and I started doing real estate investing full time, raised a bunch of money to be able to like invest in rental properties, flipped houses, did a lot of creative funding, creative financing, all that kind of stuff. I taught people how to do a lot of real estate. I built teams out, employed people, built the legit big business, and then had to pivot from there. You know what I'm saying? Like, real estate is hard. And, I would say there's some losses that I took in real estate, and I'm gonna definitely dive into some of those losses in another episode, because that deserves its own. So I don't want to even like belabor that and give too much time into that one, because that deserves its own time. To be able to really do like a case study and a deep dive on it, but experienced losses there. And then had to pivot my life again, then jump right back into corporate America, jump back into executive sales, kind of what I was doing at HP, and jumped into that and working at Xerox and climbing the ladder there and building out teams there and making tons of money there. And then just continuing to make the pivots. Then here it is. I get this wild idea to create this cool podcast. I had this idea to create a podcast and simultaneously launch a coaching business, because I knew that through all of my successes, all of my failures, that I had a unique ability to understand business, to understand systems, and to be able to help other people not experience the failure and make the pivots that I knew that I was important for me to take, and did that. And 90 days after I started that business, it became a 6-figure business. It began to generate 5 figures a month in monthly recurring revenue. Like, begin to help people and help people have success in their life and help people have success in their mindset. All of this stuff is just coming together, simultaneously, being married and having children and going through transitions with life and going through what it is to have ups and downs in relationships, and trying to be a good father and trying to show my children a father and like that I didn't have, right? And trying to be, as best you can to be a good husband, and trying to serve your family at the highest capacity and love your spouse. Like, all of that stuff, man, like everybody has this like wiring and this culmination of the life that they're trying to create. And doing the best they can with what they've got. And so there's so much power in your story. And I want to start landing the plane here, because it would take me probably an hour. It'll probably be an hour and a half episode if I really wanted to pull out a lot of the gems from my story. And I fast forwarded a lot. But what prompted this conversation, what prompted this episode, is what I want to continue to push you in. And I'd love more than anything for you guys to do this exercise. Is I want you to write down your story. If someone wanted to learn your story, how would they learn it? And maybe this is a legacy move for you. Maybe you can do this because your kids may need to read it one day. Maybe there's things about your story that your kids may never know. And it'll be good for you to write this down and create a my story. Just write a nice note, right? As long as you can. Mine right now is like 1,100 words, and I'm still not done. There's a bunch of details I skipped through, and I could still add in more. It could probably be 1,500 to 2,000 words, and just telling my story and how I got to where I am. And so, but my goal for this is to give you guys my story, because I was so encouraged when I looked at it. And I was like, man, I've been through a lot. And it gave me even more, like I began to applaud myself, like, man, you've done good with what you've got. Like you've played your cards. You took some L's, bro. Like you fumbled some bags for sure. Like you've took some losses. But with all of that considered, you've done well. And not only do I feel that I've done well because I'm my own measure, but I want to live a life that is pleasing to God and that does well for God. And so I genuinely feel that I want to live a life where God just says, well done, my good and faithful servant. Like, well done. And so I want to push you there. Your story can help set and break through so many people. You can break people through because of your story. And don't be ashamed of your story. Don't be ashamed of where you came from, how you were brought up, what you've seen going on in life, your background, your perspective. Know that that's what God gave you. God decided to drop you into the family that you were placed in. And that could be one of your biggest gifts, is what you were placed in, how God dropped you into your world, into your family, because that's the only thing in life you didn't get to choose. Everything else you can choose. You could choose what you eat. You could choose what you drive. You could choose where you live. You could choose where you work. You could choose the business you start. You could choose your spouse. You could choose all of that stuff. But none of us gets to choose who we're born into, what we're born into. We all got to play the cards that we're dealt. And so I want to encourage you in that. That's my story. I'd love to connect. I'd love for you guys to provide your stories. And that's what we've got for you on this episode. I appreciate it. We so appreciate you listening to this episode. Continue to give this podcast a rating and review. And remember, life is all about the pivots, and those who decide to make the pivots decide to become successful. Peace.